Okay, so Yvonne, are you letting people in and I'll do the introduction?
Yeah,
Sound good?
yes.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining us on our short 30-minute webinar today. We're going to try and keep things really short and focused. I've got myself, Jen. I'm a member of Jolly Learning with Yvonne. Myself, I'm the customer experience designer, so I help make sure that I get any feedback from you guys so that we can share it with the team and improve our product. Yvonne is our literacy specialist. She's an amazing, experienced teacher and educator for many years. Today, we're going to talk some more about early learning years. We're going to record the session and share it with you via email at the end. And any questions that you might have, please do share it with us in the question and answer box. I will be answering, well, I'll be monitoring it and trying to answer as we go. And then at the end, we'll try to save 10 minutes so that Yvonne can answer any questions that you might have. While people are joining in, please do share with us where you're coming from. We always love to see where you are. Based in Montreal. Yvonne has just got back from India and probably feeling quite tired, but she's looking fabulous as always. And today, we will share with you a code. I'll just put it in the chat in a moment, but I just want to see where everybody's coming from. Oh, we've got lots of people from India,
Mm,
Pakistan, Zimbabwe, Egypt. Wow, Wales,
everywhere.
South Africa. I mean, wow, amazing. But we do have a discount code for you that we'll share with you at the end, and I will also put it in the chat in a moment. So, without further ado, oh, and also we have created a handout sheet to summarize everything too. So, we will be able to share that with you at the end as well with the email that will go out at the end. So, you don't need to take notes. Everything will be sent with you. And also, I know this is a popular question. We are not giving certificates for these short 30-minute webinars. However, if you are interested in courses that do have certificates with them, I will also share a link with you on our website for our Jolly courses. All right, over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you. And it's lovely to see familiar names. We got Corinne and Annette and many people traveling from all over the place. So we are deeply appreciative of you joining because it's very late at that time of the year. So I'm going to get started because we don't have a lot of time. But let me just go into present mode and I'll ask Jen if everything is looking okay. Is it working, Jen? Can you see the presentation?
I actually cannot. Oh, yes, now I can. It was
Okay,
just
panic over. Always the most scariest part when sharing. So thank you. So if you came to the last webinar we had, which was focusing on early years and using the handbook, we're now just moving on a little bit to see how we can use the other resources, but more importantly, what does the early years foundation stage look like? So what you can see here, it's what we're briefly overviewing. But when we say flexible approaches to the program, it's looking at what you can use and how you can be successful with keeping to what children need to have, but also very appreciative of what the early stages needs to be able to get to phonemic awareness and developing that skill for oracy. But firstly, let me say what Jolly Phonics is an amazing program that has been accredited by the Department of Education. And this means quite a lot because it's a very thorough testing to make sure that we get that accreditation, meaning that we tick all the boxes that are necessary to deliver a systematic synthetic phonics program. And being mindful of that, being used in early years, it means that as we are progressing with the Department of Education's directives throughout the world, really, it's not just only in UK, we find that there is more emphasis that children may benefit from having phonemic awareness from those early years, pre-reception class, which is 4 to 5 year old in the UK, and how that can be built into providing a really good, solid foundation for when they move on to having Jolly Phonics or any systematic phonics in a more structured way. So the one thing about Jolly Phonics, it's easy to implement if you know the program, you know that the plans are, we have the core and they're very adaptable, but also it's scaffolding, that very important word, it's scaffolding children's knowledge, but most importantly, it's developed by teachers for teachers, so we know what it's like in the classroom. We have our 7 groups, which are divided up into different sounds. And if we're looking at early years, we tend to think about how children will manage when they get from group 4 onwards. And I'll touch on that a little bit as we go forward. But we have the organization of the letters so that children can start to understand that that shape has a sound. And even in early years, we build up to that. And I'll be touching on that briefly. But for any of you who are not familiar with the seven groups, this is how they are organized. And they're organized so that children can start reading and practicing their letter sounds with CVC words before they move on to having 2 letters making 1 sound, which is a digraph. And if you are also familiar with steps 2 and 3, you recognize that children move on to alternative spelling. So we're really giving them a solid foundation to move on with their skills. Now, talking about skills, where would we be without our 5 key skills that the authors put together so that children are using them to a lesser or greater degree within the program? But what we know with early years are some of these are not used to great extent. We are just providing an awareness. We do have blending and segmenting, but it's more oral, and we're getting children tuned in to those sounds as they're listening. We're looking at incidental blending and segmenting, but mostly focusing on the initial sound. But I've been in classes where children have accelerated to blending and segmenting short CVC words, and that is an absolute gift, but it's something we don't push. If you remember from the last webinar, when I was showing you how to use the handbook, you'll see that there are many opportunities to use the games and also structuring how we progress with children. And something that we probably are incidentally using through speech and also stories are the tricky words. We're not actually focusing too much on those, but anything that you do with small children where they're listening to grammar in context, stories, it's going to make a huge impact. So if you are working with children in early years, what do you need to know? And this is something we're getting regularly asked now that we have our standard class, which is reception, and children in reception 4 to 5 years old are probably starting with their systematic phonics in a structured way. But we're looking at the level below that, where children are listening and building up all of their skills. And it's a process that very much depends on how the children are managing the cognitive load. We're very aware we can't put too much on children, but also you're planning on how you are giving the sounds each week and children's awareness of what they are hearing associated to stories and other areas. One of the good things is that for a more structured approach, we are use the pupils' books 1, 2, and 3, all the way from the beginning of reception onwards. And you have the teacher's book, which supply the lesson plans. And also we have Jolly Classroom, which I'll mention a bit further on. But we have all the things that are there to support the children's flight path with their knowledge. And we are very aware that when children get to about 4 to 5 or 5 to 6, this is when more formal teaching is required. So you have your systematic approach here. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about reception class. But when we get to early years, what you can see here is that we have under the umbrella the teacher's knowledge. And this is really important because your understanding of how the program works is really important, even if you're delivering it to a lesser degree. You need to know how you get to certain points, the desired outcomes, and then you can bring that back to how it fits within your early years lesson planning. Also, your expectations. Remember, we're working with very small children, and for them, it is a big leap moving on to that symbol has a sound. So we build up to that, as I will show you in the next couple of slides, and we can't miss those sequences out. And what research tells us, research is informing us all the time. Not that starting earlier is better, but a gentle introduction provides that foundation to be able to deal with the program in its whole entirety. The children are better equipped. We also know that pushing a child to do too much can also have a lot of failure and children lose interest. So that cognitive ability is extremely important, and also the teaching and learning opportunities. But the one thing we know about using Jolly Phonics is its multi-sensory approach is extremely easy for very young children to not only to be developing all those other skills that are needed, like hand-to-eye coordination, listening skills, comprehension, making sense of the sound and the letter shape through these activities, but the engagement also is helping children develop skills. So using the program, we're not only offering a way forward with children learning phonics, but also the other skills that come. The challenging with very young children, or even older children to some extent, is limited attention span. We must be mindful that a child being in a phonics lesson, the attention span may be less than 5 minutes. And if any of you are working with young children and you recognize this, give me a thumbs up, because you probably recognize that it is difficult to sustain that interest. But also yeah, I've got the thumbs up coming. Thank you very much. But also what we do realize is that once you've done your key teaching point, and you may remember from the last session about the handbook, is when you're doing those key sounds, how are you implementing that during the day? And this is the flexible approach. Like if you have introduced the s or the a or the t, are you reminding the children as they go through the day that that is a table? Can you hear the t in table? We are going to sit down. We are constantly bringing children back in a very passive way to reinforce the explicit teaching that I have done. Also, small children find it very difficult to follow multi-step instructions. They're building up these skills. We often say that children can only manage 3 things at a time. But what we are asking children to do, they're listening, they're learning, we're asking for a production, and that's a lot for small children. So remember that the lesson plans are adaptable in case you just want to do 2 lessons a week for very young learners. And also, we have children who may have speech delay. And also, we don't know with very young children if they may have other issues that have not been diagnosed yet, maybe impaired listening, impaired speech. And of course, the one thing that we know is limited vocabulary. And this is where not only the stories from the program can absolutely help children tune into those sounds, but also on the big scale, the stories that you do in classroom are delivering vocabulary all the time, so children can get on. Now, the one good thing about this is that it's a recording, so you can stop and you can look at everything on the slide. But this is a step we cannot jump over quickly with children. They need to be able to go through these steps so that they can make sense of the phonics when we bring the lessons in. As you can see here, we develop with noises and then instrumental sounds and a body percussion. We are building up that knowledge that when a child hears a sound, they recognize it. Why? Because when we get to building up a child's understanding of that is a shape and that is a sound, they've already layered that foundation, listening, and also what visual cues they have as well. And we put a lot of emphasis on nursery rhymes and alliteration, and also oral blending and segmenting. Again, it's a case that children can do this as we layer it through the curriculum that they are doing. So as you can read here, before children can make that differentiation between a s and an a or a t and a p, they have to discriminate every single sounds. And recently someone said, well, isn't this a waste of time? Absolutely not, because in having that tuned in, we also can use our assessments to understand if children are not picking up the sounds at these early stages. Maybe I need to slow down with my planning. Maybe that child needs to have some support before we move on to more high level cognitive layered thinking, such as in reception with the phonics program. And as you can see here, what it says there, this broad listening skill transfers to foaming level listening. So it's an important one we mustn't race through. And through the stories and through the songs and the chants of the program, children are listening to this rhyme and rhythm so that they're building up their pattern and recognition. Now, especially if children are working through English as a second language or an additional language, they need to hear the grammar. They need to hear how language is developing a pattern. Children will have been cued into this because you've done the sounds and you've also done the rhythm and body percussion. So using the program allows you to be able to slow down so children can enjoy all of these things, but also use the resources to support it. In early years, the kind of resources you'll be using, which I'll mention in the next slide, will also be able to be used further up the school. So if you are a school that is using Jolly Phonics, think about how you can share resources and also what you need to invest in. I'm aware of the time, so I'm moving forward. And as you can see, we're building up these auditory and cognitive foundations. But doing so, it's not about rushing into letter sounds. And in the last webinar, we explored ways that children can be using the manipulatives to be able to build up that skill, and also how you can look at the lesson plans to be able to look at the core teaching and see what you can do with your children and the age. That's another thing, the expectations. We are doing a gentle introduction, which means children are developing these skills. So do have a look at these slides when you can slow them down. So it's all about phonemic awareness. As I've mentioned, the gentle introduction, we are scaffolding how children are not only looking at the letter sound, they're hearing the letter sound, you are doing the initial sounds. You may be able to introduce children to do the manipulatives such as plasticine, finger tracking, and use the resources such as the finger phonic books, a small one, so that they can sit and they can practice. Look at every opportunity to extend your explicit learning moment. And in the program, you can see on the left here everything that we have, and you can see on the other side how it is complemented, because if you're doing the actions, if you're doing the songs, children are working with that gross and fine motor skills. They're copying the action and they're noticing the rhyme and the rhythm. Remember, at this age, children who are born in a January may have a big differentiation to those who are born in December. So it's all about providing the environment and letting the children be exposed. And also you can see here that when we use Jolly Phonics, we are strengthening the phonemic awareness, the phonological awareness by what we are offering and how it is integrated into your class. Remember, I mentioned about 5 minutes is the attention span, but you could do something different each day. You can use a different part of the program, like the manipulatives, the songs, the actions, and even getting children, if we are doing percussion, to tap out what they hear, that gentle introduction to blending and segmenting. So thank you for the emojis. And also in your setting, we have 42 sounds. Would you get through all the 42 sounds? Probably not. And many teachers say, but when we get to A, what do I do that? You are bringing children to that A sound in train and paint. You're exaggerating. You can point to the grapheme, and I recommend you have a big grapheme up there or the illustrated cards, and they are hearing the sound. Remember, don't change the order of the letter sounds, because all your resources are in the pathway so that you can actually start blending and segmenting correctly. But you can emphasize sounds that children can listen to. And also, if you find them in stories, apart from the Jolly stories, it's a great way to emphasize. But those digraphs they can hear, emphasize them as you are saying them. And also, the program works very well. And I love in the moment planning and loose parts, and it fits very nicely even into forest schools. There are always opportunities to use the Jolly Phonics program within the nursery settings, but you've got to think of your pace, your resources, and your desired outcomes. And as I mentioned, 42 sounds may be a big step for 3 to 4 year olds, but if you manage to get the 3 groups done and get them done well, this moves on nicely to the next level. Here, as you can see, where children are required to be able to do communication and language. But if you look at it, it fits into everything else we're doing using the Jolly Phonics program. They do get to express what they do and do not like with the stories. The expressive arts and design can be the manipulatives, and the children are practicing understanding the world with the stories. And also you've got things here like the puppets where children are developing their dialogue. But more than anything, the resources that you use, you will find what works well with your children, but offering a variety also helps children to recognize that they can look for what they are, the letters and the sounds in print, their curiosity, and it's not predictable. We don't want children to have predictable lessons all the time because they will become very bored with that delivery. And how your knowledge, that goes back to the very beginning when I mentioned your knowledge makes a huge impact. Have a look at the Jolly Learning webpage because we have a teacher's part where you can have a look at some of the suggestions we have and also ideas to support you. Now,
Yvonne, I just want to let you know.
okay, so I've only got 1 minute or so, and here I'm just showing you how, even if you're using Jolly Classroom, you don't need to go into the full program, but if your school has it, look at how you can just use this. I'm only going to do 2 or 3 sounds. So again, we're looking at a way to delivery. The digital literacy is important, but we don't want it overwhelming. Books like these ones, which are hardboard books where children are finger tracking with a visual cue, absolutely lovely for your story corner, but also that children are developing that curiosity with print and also enjoying holding a book and knowing which way to do the sweep. And picture flat cards. Now, Jen, you mentioned earlier that we've got a code for this, haven't we?
Yes, absolutely. And I will post it in the chat as well. And just so you know, I've been doing my very best to answer the questions and keep the questions coming. Yvonne's got a few more minutes and
Yeah.
just she's going to finish up the slides quickly and then we'll get to the questions after.
And this is the one question that I get asked, that if children have an exposure in nursery and then they are opened up to the full program the next year, are they going to be bored? No. Remember, when you are using the resources with the younger children, you're delivering at a different level. And then when you move up, hopefully they'll have more vocabulary skills. They'll be tuned in to letter sounds and letter shapes. They'll also be able to support new children who have come into the class. That foundation means that the recovery of all those sounds that they have learned will come pretty quickly, which means that all that scaffolding in early years has been worth it, because even with maturity over several months of having the program, once they go into reception class and have it fully, just imagine that recall of understanding. I have a shape, I have a sound, I know what blending and segmenting generally means, and also my oracy and ability to listen is heightened. So don't worry that the children are going to get bored with the resources, because when we start with a story at the beginning of the year in early years, that's almost an academic year before you go back to that story, and you go in more profoundly, you go in with more structure, and you open up all the lesson plan so that they can deal with it. They're older, so they can deal with it. So Jen, I think I made enough time for questions.
Yes, and the two questions that are still open are in the chat. So the first one is about how does Jolly Phonics help children who have speech delay or those students who can't speak clearly?
Okay, so the good thing is the program is developed for pronunciation, and on the webpage we do have Gemma who has done all the pronunciation. Children who have specific speech delay, it may be good to identify through the assessment exactly what the delay may incur. It could be specific letters and specific sounds. I remember in Spain we had a boy who his R's were L's and his L's were R's. And we had to do a lot of repetition and also using that tactile. And maybe you, Jen, have seen this where they're actually finger tracking and saying the sound, but also more segmenting where they're actually breaking down words and you can identify it may not be every single sound, it may be just particular ones. So it's worth first doing the assessment on the sounds, the letter sounds, and finding out which ones it could be.
Yeah, excellent. And somebody else has asked about whether you can start phonics with a 2-year-old.
It would be highly ambitious to get children at 2 years old to be able to do some of the program, but certainly exposing children to the letter sounds with a grapheme is a gentle warm up. But you've got to understand your desired outcomes would be just its exposure. You're building up that children's understanding of the letter sound and the letter shape. Remember, at 2, children are barely able to speak and they're just putting all of this together. They're babbling, some of them, and some of them may have good skills, but it's your idea would be awareness. You are having a gentle awareness for children. I think also you've got to be clear with parents at starting at 2 what the expectations would be. Remember, children need a lot of repetition at that age because they're learning so many other skills that are required to be able to do phonics well when they move further up. So focus on the percussion, the body, the environmental print, follow the stages that are required to get children to the point where phonemic awareness actually has an impact. And if you miss out some of these stages, it's very hard to get it back. So I'd be mindful about that.
There's been quite a few questions regarding special needs children or children that are blind. How might this course work for them?
Okay. So when children are very young, it's quite difficult to have a diagnosis on what the child might have. We may be aware that children could have impaired hearing or speech, or there may be some delay in being able to transmit what they're learning, but also remember that they are young and we never do a formal assessment on children until they're about 7 or 8 because of that developmental curve. So it's worth doing regular assessments and evaluations to see what the commonality of what your child is doing. But certainly from the ages from under 4, it's developmental, unless it is really obvious that that child is struggling. And as Sue Lloyd says, you begin to pick up children who can do the sounds quite easy and effortlessly. But I think it's when they have the full immersion into the program, we then can assess. And I think that's right, Jen, isn't it? Once they start doing the assessments and the evaluation, we then can see the gaps and what needs looking at and attacking.
Yeah, perfect. There's also some questions about what you do for older children after phonics. And I think also connected to that is after the 42 letter sounds, because that's only step 1 of our program, what are you doing? And then after you've done all 3 steps, what are you doing?
Yeah, because it's very important to remember that Jolly Phonics isn't only the 42 sounds. In steps 2 and 3, we are building up children's knowledge of the alternative spellings and how they're putting that all together to structure their reading and writing. And remember, writing is usually one of the slower processes. So even if we think about children learning the 42 sounds, they are reading, they are receptacle to that. But it's very important so that children don't have gaps further on, that they complete the other steps. And these other steps, it's like a learning spiral. They're expanding their knowledge so that they can read. And also, if you have children, the decodable readers are essential for them to practice everything they have learned. They need a place to be able to put all of this together. So older children, dictation, which we call listen and write, and decodable readers are essential.
Perfect. Thank you so much. A few people are asking about EAL. So trying to understand how children will deal with this method? Also, if they don't have very much English words, how are they able to do it? And I think there's two different contexts here, Yvonne. There's some teachers that are asking from the perspective of English as a second language, like the entire school speaks another language, versus some are in the English environment, but they have a high EAL classroom. So how does Jolly Phonics work in those two different situations?
Okay, so the stories are a great way for children to hear grammar in a context. So they're picking up the rhythm and the sounds and how the story comes together. But also the images. If you have Jolly Classroom, you can zoom in. If you have the big books, we are looking at how children are, through that moment of engagement, are picking up the visual cues along with the vocabulary. We have key vocabulary within the story so that children are tuning into the sound that they are learning. But we also have general vocabulary, which means they are picking up cross-curricular themes, but also language that they can use. As a teacher, you have a guide on how to use the stories, but what we are asking is you to use that opportunity to get children to communicate with each other and also ask questions. Vocabulary is one of those things. Having worked in an English as a second language environment, most children only get English in the classroom. It's how are you dripping that in through the day? Are you speaking English to them all the time? And also, are you recycling vocabulary as well? At that young age, how much vocabulary are you recycling? So again, as I mentioned earlier on, it's are you drawing the child to that initial sound? Are you getting them into gentle blending and segmenting? Can you sit down? Can you sit and up? And also the stories that you provide. It doesn't stop with Jolly Phonics stories. Children need a lot of stories, and many of the ones like the Gruffalo and Elmer are delivering language at a higher level that children can absorb. We're not expecting them to read. So again, the challenges of vocabulary, I do understand. And again, it's what you wrap around your lessons so that children are picking that up. Could be a lot of manipulative work as well with story bags, tables, stations, and a lot of this is being flagged up on our webpage. Jen, is it the teachers page where there's
Yeah, I shared the teacher's guide in the chat because there's a lot of people asking for blending support. And if you remember, Yvonne, we did a lot of work in our intervention section with really specific ideas. So I've shared those pages and also for our learning stations for more sensory, more play-based, which is perfect for early learning years. So I've shared those links with you guys. And I'm so sorry because there's still so many more questions. But what I would really recommend for people is to do check out our online teacher's guide. There's a lot of free and amazing concrete ideas with activities that you can read about and implement the next day. A lot of it is using resources that you will already have in your classroom. So you don't need to go out and buy and make a whole bunch of stuff. We try to make it as easy for you to use and implement right away. The links, that's a good question whether we'll add those links in the email. I actually don't know because I'm not writing the email, but I would just say to you that it's on our website. If you go to jollylearning.com, on the top right-hand corner, there's a big blue button that says Teacher's Guide. If you click on that, you can get in, and there's so much content. And in fact, the first two groups, we've gone through and done a lot of work on how to teach a lesson from start to finish for the first two groups in the step one. So there's a lot of content there. Please take a look and you can learn a lot more. And we really enjoy having you here. And Yvonne's got up there the discount code. Is the discount code on there, Yvonne?
I
Maybe
think it's
I.
on the handout that gets sent out. This is to
Okay.
scan for the next webinar. And also do look at the Jolly Learning YouTube channel because if you've talked about blending and segmenting, we did do webinars on
Yeah,
those.
you did, didn't you?
Yeah, and they're much longer and we went in much deeper. So please check out on the uh, Jolly Learning YouTube channel for help and support on blending, segmenting. And also we picked certain things that reoccurred as questions to develop as webinars. So please have a look to support you. And anything that you would like us to do a webinar on, please let us know in the feedback. But absolutely never forget you're doing a great job. And even I still am learning about how children are evolving with their learning. So we're all there in that way. But thank you very much, Jen, for supporting me. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined. And it's, as always, it's a pleasure to be able to share with you.
Yeah.
So we'll say goodbye for now. And
And also, we'll just put my email in one more time because if
yes,
you ever have any suggestions or questions about future features or things that we can, as a company, help support you with, please do email me so that we can get that information. And we basically want to create products that help you in the classroom.
yeah. So thank you, everybody. Such a global webinar we've had today. And we'll see you next month, where it's international, looking at IB and how Jolly works with the international curriculum. So bye, everybody, for now. And thank you, Jen.
All right, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.